Is it possible that the author of Genesis received an accurate vision of the Big Bang and the evolution of the universe and the life on Earth, and he wrote down his quote-unquote understanding of it, divinely inspired, of course, in the language and context of his culture? So that's the question. I mean, could somebody have a vision of that?
That's a really good. It's a really good question. The Catholic Church, in that same encyclical Divino Afflante Spiritu by Pope Pius XII, when he wrote it, there's a distinction that we have to make between what might be called, on the one hand, the dictation view of inspiration versus the co-participation view of inspiration. In the dictation view of inspiration, that's what you're sort of suggesting in your question, that God really sort of gave the correct scientific description to the biblical author, you know, and as it were, and maybe the biblical author then, you kind of have a mixed view, and he kind of writes it down according to things that will work for his culture. The co-participative view of inspiration, on the other hand, though, really says that God gives to the biblical author what the biblical author can understand. The Big Bang Theory is a very, very complex scientific theory. You know, it's very mathematical. Now, you can understand the general description of the Big Bang, right, without you know, too much of a difficulty. But you know, just even to describe it in terms of 13.8 billion years ago, and then to talk about the 7 eras of the universe instead of the 7 days of the universe, this is complex. You know, because you have the beginning era, which is a singularity, you know, of all the you know, the space-time, mass, energy, and the constants of the universe, and then when it explodes, right, right away the strong the gravitational force rolls off and creates a space-time field. Then, of course, the strong nuclear force and the weak force are rolling off, and then finally, of course, you have a plasma era and so forth, the era of stellar nucleosynthesis. This would have been impossible, really, for that author to understand. So what the Catholic Church says is God gives his revelation in the concepts and the words and the ideas of the culture in which the biblical author is. So the biblical author isn't going to get a scientific description of the Big Bang. He would not have been able to understand that any more than the people of his time. So God works with him and through him, right? Because inspiration is the inspiration of God through the agency, the culture, the categories of the biblical author, not for the purpose of giving scientific description, but for the express purpose of giving sacred ideas necessary for salvation. So the idea for Catholics is it really wouldn't be a mixed deal where the author gets the privileged view of the Big Bang but puts it into cultural categories himself. Actually, that's the way God does it with and for the biblical author. This goes back to a principle from St. Thomas Aquinas. You might recall it, quid recipitur est recipitur modo recipientis. Whatever is received in the manner of the receivers. So in other words, the idea there is that God is giving to us, right? We receive what we can receive in the manner that we can receive it in. And the biblical author, right, he doesn't know any science. He frankly doesn't even understand calculus, let alone tensor geometry, right? He doesn't understand, you know, the billions upon billions of years, the kinds of measurements of mass and so forth that would be required to understand the Big Bang Theory. So God really is giving it to him in a way he can receive it. And the same thing with St. Thomas, you know, it would say with other kinds of biblical truths, right? God respects the capacities, the categories, and the concepts, the ideas, the culture of the biblical author. And so, in a sense, you're on the right track, you know, in asking the question. But I don't think you want to bifurcate it and give the biblical author the privilege and then have him be the translator. God really is the wise one who knows what both the biblical author and his audience need.